Welcome back. It's time to finish up this mobile raised container planter. And the next to last step is to build the end sections for both ends. Now I started showing you in the last video how to mark out the pieces to go on the inside. Let me go through that again and we'll cut the inside pieces. And then we're going to come back and we're going to mark out outside pieces. We're going to fasten all those pieces together to make essentially an end unit that will just slip right into place. Let's get going. Alright, if you're really brave, you can put this up here, level it, and mark both sides and cut them both at once. Or if you're not exactly that brave, you can cut one side, put it up here, and get it lined up with one edge and mark the other side. Do that, and I'll go cut this. Okay, so we've got this cut now, and this goes right here. Now all I have to do is cut the second one, and since I already got a 45 on the end of a long board over there, I'll just hold that up there, mark it, and cut that. And here we go with piece number 2. That goes right in here. Just like that. And those are just sitting there for just a second. Now what we need to do is measure the width of this board up here before we cut the angles. And the easiest way to do that is just lay a board across the top here and measure. And that is exactly 4 inches. Yep, 4 inches. So I'm going to rip a board 4 inches wide, and then I'm going to mark the angles and cut that. Let me get that done real quick. And let's see if this fits. Yeah, that's just right. All right, so now these are just laid in place. They're not attached. What we want to do is we want to measure from the outside, marking the outside, and make a piece to go over here. And then we'll screw the pieces together, and because the joints will be offset, eventually this will become one unified piece. So let me cut a piece for here. All right, so after marking this out, I cut this piece out, and this goes right here, just like this. And you can see that's what I'm talking about, the overlap. I'm going to clamp this into place, and there we go. Now if you want to, measure from the top of that to the top up here on both sides and make sure that that's equal, and that is just about right. Good. All right, so now with that piece in place, I can go in from the inside, drill a couple of pilot holes, and run screws from the inside piece into the outside piece. Basically what we're doing is we're building in situ the entire end panel. So let me get those screws put in place. All right, now what we need to do is cut our next piece to go on top of this. You can take these clamps off here now. Okay, now with this top piece, after we get the angles cut, we need to cut square here to line up with the ends. Just like this, and just like that. Make those cuts, and there we go. There's our end piece. It's all one unit. I've got a few more screws to put in, but I'll do that in just a little bit. And you can see it sets right in there just like that. Now I'll show you in a few minutes how we're going to attach this. In the meantime, I'm just going to clamp it up there and put a few more screws in, and then we'll finish dressing this off and the base unit will be done. Okay, so I've got the trim boards attached around the top. That was actually pretty simple. The easiest way to do that is to get the edge-to-edge dimension here and cut one board and clamp it into place. Do the same thing on the other end, and then you can just hold up these two boards and get them lined up and mark the length that you need and cut those to size. Now these boards are attached into the sides at the tops of the legs. So there's 2 screws in each of 3 places. And I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to put a few screws in to the top of the angled part into the side, just to hold it in at the very top. The end pieces are still not attached. I've got this clamped into place and need to put screws in from here into the boards on the angled part. And I'm really worried about stripping out or splitting out this wood. So I'm using number 4 by 1.5 inch long stainless steel screws. These are, for all intents and purposes, impossible to find, but I sourced these online and I'll give you the link where you can order these. You can make a 1/16 inch pilot hole about 1/2 inch deep and run these in, and it will not split the wood. Okay, there's just a couple of more little detail things to do before we can put soil and plants in our planter. Number 1 is drainage. Now, this is by no means a watertight construction. However, if you were to get a really big rain, what we used to call in the South a gully washer, you'd want the water to drain out pretty rapidly so it didn't impact your plants. So what I'm going to do is right in the apex of the V, I'm going to drill a couple of holes right straight down through the bottom. They don't have to be big. I'm going to drill these 3/8 of an inch, and that'll drain out any excess water that might build up in there. The other thing that we need to do is through the bottom of the mobile base, we need to come up and drill pilot holes and put a couple of screws in each of the legs. Now, it's unlikely that the legs are going to come out of those dados. This is pretty heavy and the dados were a nice tight fit. But we don't want to take any chances. We don't want the legs to shift in the dados. We sure don't want them to come out. So a few screws there will hold those into place, particularly when you're moving the thing around. So I'm going to get that done, those 2 things. And then after that, there's one more key thing that has to be done, which is going to really test a couple of skills I don't have, but we need to do it before we put dirt in here. So we'll get going on these last couple of little things. All right, to give me a little bit more working space, I've put the wheels on this side up on 2x4s, and I'm just gonna use a square here to mark the location of the leg, transfer the location of the leg down to the bottom. So I want to make sure I get right in the middle of that 2x4. So once I've got a mark there, all I've got to do is measure over 3/4 of an inch. That'll get me in the middle of the 2x4, and then I can just mark my hole locations equidistant from each side, and we'll be in good shape. Now I'm drilling a pilot hole. That's just through up to the 2x4, and that's just to make the installation of the screw a little bit easier. And I'm using 4.5-inch long screws. Get up in there and get a good bite on this. Almost not enough room, even with the 2x4s. But we'll get it. Easier now. Okay. That's perfect. No way that's going anywhere. Well, if somebody had told me that I'd be using my table saw and outfeed table as a sewing center, I'd have probably said they were crazy. But I got to try to learn how to sew. Bottom line is we need landscape fabric to line the inside of the planter. I bought some 36-inch wide. Obviously that's not wide enough. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting 2 pieces to the length of the inside of the planting container plus 2 inches on each end. And I'm going to sew them together in the middle so that they'll sit down in the middle and overlap over the sides. Then I'm going to try to cut out triangular pieces for the ends and sew those on. I have no idea how this is going to work, but the bottom line is we really do need to put landscape fabric in the planter before we put the dirt in. Now this is a water and air permeable fabric. You can get this at your local hardware store. I can put the link on my website to where I ordered it online. So this is the last thing I got to do before I put dirt in, so I'm going to see if I can learn to sew. I will tell you that it's honestly embarrassing to be this bad at anything. People that sew are like miracle workers. I finally got the bottom of the V sewed, and now I've got to try to sew the ends into place. Yeah. Okay, there's one side of the V. Now I gotta figure out how to do the other side. All right, let's go see if this fits. All right, well, if you don't look too close, that's not terrible. It's going to hold soil. Now, once the soil is in, I'll trim these edges off and kind of tuck them in on the sides so that the wood shows around the planter. I think that'll be okay. Now, I've got one more thing to show you that's optional, but I decided to make it for this unit. And if you decide to make it, I'll give you a measured drawing that you can download off of my website. Let me show you this contraption. All right, now this contraption is made out of CPVC pipe. It's 1/2 inch. The fittings and the pipe are available at any big box store. It's just T's, elbows, and 1/2 inch pipe. Once you get the dimensions worked out and piece it together dry, then you can go back and glue it together. But don't glue it to start, because you may have to make some adjustments as you go along. And one thing I highly recommend is get one of these tubing cutters. I think this is about $11. I'll put a link on my website for this, but rather than sawing this PVC, this is just a dream to make all of these cuts. It just makes it so much easier. Now, I found some white translucent fabric. It's actually made to go over gardens to keep out birds and bugs and things like that, and I'm gonna sew a cover to go over this to protect it from insects and birds and things like that. You could actually fold half of it back if you wanted to and sort of shelter your tender plants like lettuce and things like that from the scorching sunlight, and leave the other half of it open for things like tomato plants that need just full bright sunlight all the time. But this is really easy to make. It took me about an hour, and I was having to work out all the dimensions and everything, so it should only take you a half an hour to put this together. Now, I have taken a photograph of this, and I will label the pieces with the links that need to be cut for this size of planter, and you can download that for free from my website. Well, that kind of wraps up this project. I may do a follow-up just to show you the dirt in there and maybe a few plants. But for now, this is done. I'm ready to roll it to the back, fill it up with dirt, and get some vegetables going. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next project.